The first time I was truly, bone-deep afraid of my husband, it wasn't because he was yelling. It wasn't a nightmare where he thrashed and screamed in his sleep. It was over a spilled glass of milk. It's almost laughable how something so small, so utterly domestic, could become the line that separated the before from the after. It was a Tuesday. I remember the light was that soft, golden hour glow that pours through the kitchen window in the late afternoon, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. I'd just finished cleaning, the sharp, clean scent of lemon polish still hanging in the air, mixed with the rich, homey smell of the pot roast I had in the oven. It was his mother's recipe, the one with the red wine and the little pearl onions, the one he always requested for special occasions. His homecoming dinner, 3 months after the official ceremonies, felt like a special occasion I was desperately trying to make real. He was home. That was the mantra I repeated to myself a dozen times a day. Ben is home. He was reaching for a glass from the cabinet, his movement a little stiff, a little careful, the way he'd been since he'd gotten back. His arm, still thickly muscled but now mapped with a few new, angry scars, brushed against the half-full glass of milk on the counter. It was a simple, clumsy accident. The glass tipped, seemed to hang in the air for a heart-stopping second, and then fell. The sound was explosive, a shattering crash that seemed to tear the quiet, careful peace of the evening to shreds. A wave of liquid white spread across the pale blue tiles, islands of sharp, glittering glass catching the light like fallen stars. For a single, suspended moment, there was only the sound of the shards settling. Then, the man I loved vanished. It was instantaneous, like a screen going black. His body, which had just been relaxed in a loose, comfortable way, went rigid. Every muscle tensed, coiling into a spring of pure, unthinking reaction. His hands, which had just been gently reaching for a glass, clenched into hard, white-knuckled fists at his sides. But it was his eyes. God, his eyes. They were the windows I'd looked into for over a decade, the warm, laughing hazel eyes that had crinkled at the corners when he proposed, that had filled with tears of joy when he first held our daughter. Now, they were flat. Distant. They weren't seeing the milk, the glass, the familiar, sunlit kitchen. They were seeing a threat I couldn't perceive, a landscape of sand and terror and imminent violence. His breathing changed, becoming a series of short, sharp, ragged pants, the sound of an animal caught in a trap. Ben? My voice came out as a whisper, thin and reedy, a pathetic sound in the face of such a terrifying transformation. It was the sound of a ghost in my own kitchen. He didn't hear me. He was gone, lost in some memory-laden battlefield. His fist came down on the granite countertop beside the sink, a hard, brutal, explosive crack that made the entire structure shudder and the dishes inside the cabinets rattle in a frantic, panicked chorus. "Get down," he roared. The voice wasn't his. It was deeper, guttural, stripped of all warmth and familiarity, a voice forged in command and survival. He was looking right through me, his gaze fixed on some phantom sniper in the hallway, his body positioned as if to shield, whom? Me? Himself? The ghosts of his fallen friends? I flinched. I couldn't help it. My body reacted before my mind could, a primal recoil from the sudden, shocking violence of the movement, the sound. My heart wasn't just beating fast, it was a frantic, trapped thing slamming against my ribs, a desperate drumbeat of fear. I took a step back, my hand flying to my mouth, my own breath catching in my throat. That movement, my retreat, seemed to be the thing that snapped the thread. His gaze, which had been fixed on some distant, internal horror, flickered. It shifted, the rage clouding over with a dawning, horrifying confusion. He looked from my terrified face, my wide eyes and trembling hand, to his own clenched fist, still resting on the counter. He looked down at the harmless, spreading puddle of milk on the floor, the mundane reality of the mess. The recognition was a physical blow. I saw it hit him. The reality of the linoleum, the humming refrigerator, the pot roast cooling on the stove, the lemon-scented air, it all came flooding back into him, and with it came a shame so profound it seemed to physically crumple him. His shoulders, so broad and strong, slumped inward as if bearing a tremendous, invisible weight. The rigid tension drained from his body, leaving him looking hollowed out, fragile. He didn't say a word. He didn't look at me again. He just turned, a slow, defeated motion, and walked out of the kitchen, his boots crunching faintly on a piece of broken glass as he left me standing there, trembling in the center of the wreckage. The spilled milk was no longer just a mess, it was a crater. The broken glass wasn't just a cleaning task, it was the shattered remains of our normal life. That was the day the war, my war, truly began. The one that started after the parades had ended, after the flags had been folded and stored in the attic, after the medals, the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, were locked away in a velvet-lined box in his top drawer, out of sight but never, ever out of mind. My husband returned from war a hero, a title bestowed upon him by a grateful nation, a label in a newspaper article. But I'm the one trying to survive what he became after the medals. I am a wife, and my battlefield is the 4-bedroom, 2-bath colonial we bought with so much hope. My mission is not to capture a hill or secure a village, but to reclaim the man I love from the darkness that has taken him hostage, a darkness that wears his face and speaks with his voice. My name is Clara Evans. Before all of this, before the fear became a permanent resident in my own home, a third presence in our marriage, I was a teacher. A high school history teacher, to be specific. It's a profession I fell into not by chance, but by a deep-seated, almost fervent belief that understanding the past is our only compass for navigating the future, our only hope for not repeating the same catastrophic mistakes. I taught about wars, the very wars Ben was fighting. I stood in front of classrooms of bright, often skeptical, teenagers and diagrammed the Battle of Gettysburg on a whiteboard, my marker squeaking as I drew Pickett's charge. I explained the complex, tangled web of alliances and geopolitical tensions that led to the frozen, bloody trenches of World War I. I analyzed the Cold War domino theory that justified the jungles of Vietnam, pointing to maps and timelines. I spoke of strategy, of politics, of dates and treaties and the cold, hard calculus of body counts. I thought, in my tidy, academic way, with my lesson plans and my primary source documents, that I understood sacrifice. I thought I understood conflict, the ebb and flow of armies and ideologies. I was a fool. A well-intentioned, educated fool. My classroom was a world of order. Cause and effect. The Treaty of Versailles, with its punitive reparations, leads directly to the economic despair and national humiliation that fuels the rise of Hitler. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand is the spark that ignites the powder keg of Europe. It was clean, logical, something you could outline in a neat, 5-paragraph essay. There was a rhythm to it, a predictable, comforting cadence of lessons, homework, tests, and the finality of a grade at the end of a term. You could measure progress. You could see understanding dawn in a student's eyes. My life with Ben, before, had a rhythm, too. A beautiful, syncopated rhythm that was uniquely ours. We met in college. I was the serious, slightly overwhelmed history major, always buried in a book about the Roman Empire or the Renaissance. He was the charismatic, grounded ROTC cadet with a smile that could disarm a whole lecture hall. He found my intensity fascinating. He said he loved the way my mind worked, that I saw the world in stories and patterns, in grand, sweeping narratives. I loved his certainty, his quiet strength, his unwavering, old-fashioned sense of duty. We were a perfect, complementary fit. He was my anchor to the present, and I was his window to the past. We built a life on that foundation. A small, sunny wedding in my parents' backyard, surrounded by laughter and the scent of roses. A fixer-upper house we painted together on weekends, our clothes splattered with morning sunshine yellow and tranquil blue, arguing playfully over brushstrokes. The joyful, terrifying, beautiful chaos of our daughter, Lily, being born. I remember him holding her for the first time, his big, capable hand seeming so enormous around her tiny, swaddled form, his eyes full of a wonder so pure it took my breath away. He'd looked at me over her head and whispered, "We made a person, Clara. A whole, perfect person." Those were the years of building, of laying down the memories that would later become both my anchor and my deepest source of pain. When he deployed the first time, when Lily was just a toddler, the fear was a sharp, acute thing, a knife's edge I was constantly aware of. I watched the news with a hard, cold knot of dread in my stomach. I jumped every time the phone rang, my heart seizing for a moment before I could answer. But he came back. A little quieter, a little more distant for a week or two, his gaze sometimes drifting away in the middle of a conversation, but he came back to me. He'd slowly, gradually, slip back into the rhythm of our life, into the skin of being a husband, a father. He'd get down on the floor and help Lily build elaborate, wobbly towers with her blocks. He'd fire up the grill on a summer evening, the scent of charcoal and searing meat a promise of normalcy. He'd hold my hand while we watched silly reality shows on the couch, his thumb absently stroking my knuckles. The rhythm would restore itself, the melody of our life finding its familiar tune again. I thought that was the pattern. Deployment, fear, homecoming, adjustment, normalcy. I thought I understood the cost. The last deployment was different. I felt it in my bones, a deep, cellular foreboding, long before he even packed his duffel bag. The goodbye at the base was heavier, more fraught. His embrace was a fraction too long, too tight, as if he were trying to memorize the feel of me. When he finally pulled away, his eyes, those windows I knew so well, already held a shadow I hadn't seen before, a bleakness that seemed to swallow the light. That year was the longest of my life. The days stretched out, thin and gray and endless. His letters, which had once been long, funny, detailed missives about the absurdities of army life, grew less frequent. When they did arrive, they were clipped, sterile. The man speaking on the other end of a crackling, delayed satellite phone was a pared-down, minimalist version of Ben, a man speaking only in military jargon and vague, hollow reassurances. Everything's fine, Clara. The weather's hot. Don't worry about me. But I was a historian. I knew that when the primary sources go silent, when the letters stop coming and the voices become guarded, it almost always means something terrible is happening. The silence itself became a source of terror. The day he returned, the official return, was a spectacle of patriotism and pride, a pageant designed to provide closure. A bright, relentlessly sunny day at the army base. Families clutching handmade signs with glitter and clumsy child-drawn pictures. A sea of American flags waving in the breeze, a brilliant, moving tapestry of red, white, and blue. A military band playing something brassy and triumphant, the notes soaring into the clear blue sky. Lily, 7 years old and vibrating with excitement, was dressed in her best floral dress, her hair neatly braided. She held a sign she'd made herself, "Welcome home, Daddy." Our hero. When his unit finally marched onto the parade ground in their crisp, desert camouflage uniforms, my heart swelled with a painful, proud joy that felt like it might crack my ribs. There he was. My Ben. He was thinner, his face more lined and weathered, his posture almost too perfect, but he was home. He was really home. The speeches were made, full of words like valor, sacrifice, and grateful nation. The medals were pinned on his uniform, the weight of the medal and ribbon a tangible symbol of what he'd endured. The crowd erupted in cheers, a wave of sound that washed over us. Lily beamed, so proud of her daddy, her hero. I beamed too, tears of relief and happiness streaming down my face, believing, with my whole heart, the story we were all being told, the story we so desperately wanted to believe, the hero had returned. The story was over. The credits could roll. I didn't know it was just the prologue to mine. The real story, the hard story, was just beginning. The first few weeks were a kind of honeymoon period, a bubble of fragile, tentative joy. He was so happy, so genuinely grateful to be home, to be surrounded by the simple, profound comforts of his old life, a cold beer from his own refrigerator, the familiar softness of his own bed, the sound of Lily's unrestrained laughter echoing through the house. He seemed to be drinking it all in, storing it up. But the cracks began to show in small, almost imperceptible ways at first, like hairline fractures in fine china. He stopped sleeping through the night. I'd wake from a deep sleep to find his side of the bed empty, the sheets cold. I'd find him sitting in the dark living room, silhouetted against the big picture window, staring out at the silent, sleeping street, his body held in a state of rigid alertness. He said it was just jet lag, the body's difficulty adjusting to the 12-hour time difference. "It'll pass," he'd murmur, pulling me onto his lap, holding me close. I wanted so badly to believe him. I wrapped his explanation around me like a blanket. He started avoiding crowds. We tried to go to the county fair, a tradition we'd loved since we were dating, a night of greasy food, silly games, and the bright, chaotic energy of the Midway. But he lasted maybe 10 minutes. I saw the change come over him. A fine sheen of sweat appeared on his forehead despite the cool evening air. His eyes, instead of taking in the colorful lights and laughing faces, darted around, constantly scanning, assessing, looking for exits, for threats. His hand gripped mine too tightly, his knuckles white. "Too many people," he'd muttered, his voice tight. "Too much noise. I can't. I need to go." And we left, just like that, Lily confused and disappointed, her bag of cotton candy untouched, me making feeble excuses about Daddy feeling tired. The 4th of July was the worst, a cruel irony that wasn't lost on me. We were in our own backyard, surrounded by neighbors, the air smelling of grilling burgers and citronella candles. Lily was running through the grass with sparklers, drawing bright, fleeting circles in the dark. The first firework of the professional display, a distant, muffled pop from the town park followed by a brilliant shower of green and gold light, didn't register in his brain as celebration. It was a trigger. He didn't just jump. He dove. He moved with a speed and ferocity that was terrifying, grabbing me and Lily and pulling us down behind the heavy wooden picnic table, his body a shield, a tight, protective coil of pure panic. "Incoming! Get down! Stay down," he shouted, his voice raw with a fear I had never heard from him before. He was shouting commands, names of his squad mates, words I couldn't understand, his face a mask of sheer, unadulterated terror. Lily started crying, great, heaving sobs of confusion and fear. I knelt beside him, my hand on his back, feeling the violent tremors racking his powerful frame. "Ben, it's okay, it's just fireworks, you're home, you're safe, we're in the backyard," I kept repeating, a desperate, pleading mantra, trying to use my voice as a rope to pull him back from the edge. It took a full 5 minutes for the spell to break, for him to blink and see the familiar shape of our maple tree against the night sky, to hear Lily's cries and my frantic whispers. When he came back, the shame was immediate and devastating. He couldn't look at Lily. He couldn't look at me. He just sat there on the grass, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking, a broken statue of a hero. The anger was the hardest part to bear, because it was so unpredictable, so at odds with the man I knew. It wasn't the quick, hot flash of temper he'd sometimes had before, the kind that flared and faded. This was a low, constant simmer, like a pot left on a burner for too long, always on the verge of boiling over. It didn't take much. A misplaced remote control, a bill he'd forgotten to pay, the sound of Lily and her friends playing too loudly in the backyard, these trivial, everyday frustrations could trigger a storm. He'd yell, his voice a weapon, his words sharp and meant to wound, lashing out at the nearest target, which was usually me. He'd accuse me of nagging, of not understanding, of living in a naive, sheltered little world. Then, as quickly as the storm had flared, it would vanish, leaving behind a hollowed-out man filled with a remorse so deep it was suffocating. He'd apologize, over and over, his head in his hands, his voice thick with self-loathing. "I'm sorry, Clara, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm like this. I'm a monster. You deserve better than a monster." And I, the history teacher who believed in cause and effect, in rational solutions to complex problems, would try to find the logic, to fix it. I'd try to talk to him, using my calm, reasonable, teacher voice. "Ben, maybe you should talk to someone. The VA has programs. There are therapists who specialize in this. There are people who can help you process what happened over there." My words, so reasonable, so logical, were like throwing pebbles into a deep, dark, bottomless well. I never heard them land. He'd shut down completely. A wall of impenetrable silence would descend. "I'm fine. I can handle it. I don't need to sit in a circle and rehash it all with some stranger who's never even held a weapon. Talking doesn't change what happened." His refusal was a fortress, and I was bruising myself, battering my body and soul against its unyielding walls. My profession, my whole worldview, was failing me. There was no lesson plan for this. There was no chapter in my thick, comprehensive history books titled What to Do When the Love of Your Life is Consumed by Invisible Wounds. There was no primary source document that could tell me how to reach a man who was physically present but spiritually a million miles away. I was trying to teach a room full of 16-year-olds about the fall of the Roman Empire, about the complex socioeconomic factors that led to its decline, while my own empire, the small, precious kingdom of our family, was crumbling from within, under the assault of an enemy I couldn't see or fight. I'd stand in front of my class, pointer in hand, talking about the Treaty of Versailles and the punitive reparations that crippled Germany and planted the seeds for the next war, and all I could think about was the punitive silence in my own house, the emotional reparations that were bankrupting us, the seeds of resentment and fear that were being sown in the fertile soil of our love. The symbols of our life together became perverted, twisted into symbols of our struggle. His uniform, once a source of such immense pride, hung in the back of our closet like a ghost, the crisp, camouflage fabric smelling faintly of dust and sand I couldn't brush away. I couldn't look at it without a piercing ache of sorrow. Our wedding rings, which had once felt like a permanent, joyful connection, now felt like shackles some days, binding me to a man who was only half present, a ghost in the machine of his own body. The house we had painted together, room by room, with so much hope and laughter and plans for the future, now felt like a fortress under a constant, silent siege, and I was the lone, exhausted guard on the walls, watching for the next attack from the enemy within, an enemy that wore the face of the man I loved more than life itself. Lily was struggling, and watching her struggle was a special kind of torture. Her bright, bubbly, engaged father was now a moody, unpredictable stranger who inhabited his body. She was a sensitive child, perceptive beyond her years, and she learned to read the room the moment she came home from school. She learned to tiptoe around him, to speak in a quieter voice, to gauge his mood from the set of his shoulders as he sat in his armchair, staring at the blank television screen. She'd come to me in the kitchen, her small face serious, and ask in a hushed, worried tone, "Is Daddy mad, Mommy?" And I never knew what to say. What was the right answer? How do you explain to a second grader that her hero is fighting a brutal, relentless war inside his own head, a war with no clear front lines and no end in sight? I'd fall back on the same tired, hollow excuses. Daddy's just tired, sweetheart. Daddy has a lot on his mind. But she was a smart girl. She saw the tension in my smile. She saw the flicker of fear in my eyes when he raised his voice. I was failing her, too. My sacrifice was her childhood innocence, the carefree security that should have been her birthright. I started missing things. I missed parent-teacher conferences for the first time in my career because Ben had a particularly bad night, haunted by nightmares so vivid he was afraid to go back to sleep, and I was afraid to leave him alone. I called in sick to work more and more frequently, my own career, my own identity, my own passion, being slowly eroded by the constant, draining state of emergency at home. My colleagues, my fellow teachers, started to look at me with a mixture of pity and confusion. My friends, the ones I used to have coffee with and go to movies with, slowly stopped calling. It was too hard to explain, and the truth was too heavy, too complicated, to lay on anyone over a casual cup of coffee. "How's Ben?" they'd ask, their voices full of cheerful expectation, and I'd force a bright, brittle smile. "He's adjusting. You know, it takes time." The lie was a bitter taste of ash in my mouth. I was isolated, completely and utterly alone. A general without an army, fighting a war with no rules of engagement, a war that no one else could see. The climax of this slow, grinding, soul-crushing conflict didn't arrive with a dramatic, cinematic bang, but with a quiet, desperate whisper. It was a Thursday, an utterly ordinary Thursday in late October. Lily had her school play. She was a talking tree in the second-grade environmental awareness musical. It was a small part, just one line, but she'd been practicing it for weeks with a solemn intensity that was both adorable and heart-wrenching. "I am the mighty oak, and my leaves whisper secrets of the clean air." She would announce it to the empty living room, her arms spread wide. She was so excited. Ben had promised her, looking her right in the eyes, that he would be there. "Front row, kiddo," he'd said, and she had thrown her arms around his neck. That afternoon, I was rushing to get everything ready. I'd laid out her costume, a clever construction of brown felt and green construction paper leaves. I was about to start getting her dressed when I realized I hadn't seen Ben in a while. I found him in the garage. He was just sitting in the driver's seat of the car, the engine off, the keys in his lap, staring blankly at the closed, white-painted garage door. He'd been there, according to the clock on the dashboard, for over 45 minutes. Ben? Honey, we need to go soon. The play starts in an hour. We should get Lily ready. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. I can't, Clara. The flatness of his tone sent a chill down my spine. What do you mean, you can't? You promised her. Ben, she's counting on you. She's been talking about this for weeks. I can't sit in that auditorium. His voice was low, devoid of all emotion. All those people packed in. The lights going down. The noise. The confinement of it. I can't breathe thinking about it. I can't. A cold, sharp fury rose in me, not at him, not at the man, but at the situation, at the insidious illness that was stealing yet another precious, irreplaceable moment of joy from our daughter. This was her childhood, and it was being stolen, piece by piece. Ben, I said, my voice trembling with the effort to stay calm. Look at me. This is your daughter. Lily. She needs you to be her father for 1 hour. Just 1 single hour. You have faced down enemy fire. You have led men through hell. You can sit in a middle school auditorium and watch your little girl be a tree. It was the absolute wrong thing to say. I knew at the moment the words left my mouth. I saw the shutters slam down behind his eyes, the final, definitive retreat. You don't get it, he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper that was far more frightening than any shout. You have no idea what you're talking about. You think it's that simple? Just show up? Just power through? Clara, I'm not a machine you can just reprogram. I'm broken. Can't you see that? I'm a broken, worthless piece of, he trailed off, the rest of the sentence too vile, even for him, to utter. He shoved the car door open, pushing past me with a force that wasn't violent but was utterly dismissive, and strode back into the house. I stood alone in the garage, surrounded by the silent, dusty artifacts of our past life, the lawnmower he used to tinker with on Sundays, Lily's old pink bicycle with the training wheels, the sled we'd all used that one magical winter it snowed enough, and I felt something deep inside me, the last fragile thread of hope I'd been clinging to, finally, irrevocably, snap. The belief that my love could be enough, that my patience could outlast this, that I could somehow fix him, it just broke. It shattered on the concrete floor alongside my heart. I went to the play alone. I sat in the darkened, buzzing auditorium, surrounded by happy, whole families, fathers with video cameras and mothers beaming with pride, and I watched my beautiful daughter on the makeshift stage. She was magnificent. She delivered her line perfectly, her voice clear and strong, filled with theatrical gravity. I am the mighty oak, and my leaves whisper secrets of the clean air. As she said it, she scanned the audience, her eyes searching for her dad. When she didn't find him, when her eyes met only mine, her bright, proud smile faltered for just a second, a tiny crack in her performance, before she bravely, heartbreakingly, fixed it back in place. In that moment, I saw the true, lasting cost of this war written on her small, hopeful face. It was a cost I was no longer willing to pay. The collateral damage had to stop. I cried all the way home. Not the quiet, elegant tears of a sad movie, but great, heaving, ugly sobs that made it hard to see the road, that racked my entire body. I had reached my end. The absolute end of my rope. I had no more strategies, no more patience, no more comforting lies to tell myself. I was a teacher who had failed her most important student. I was a wife who had lost her husband to a shadow. I was a mother who was failing, every single day, to protect her child from the fallout. I was empty. When I walked into the house, it was dark and silent, the way it always was now. Ben was sitting on the floor in the living room, his back against the sofa, his long legs stretched out in front of him. He'd been crying, too. His face was ravaged, his eyes red-rimmed and swollen. The sight of him, this strong, proud, capable man reduced to a heap of utter despair on the floor, shattered what was left of my heart into a million irreparable pieces. I didn't go to him. I didn't kneel and put my arms around him. I didn't offer any of the empty comforts I'd exhausted over the past months. I stood before him, my own face raw and blotchy from tears, my body trembling with a terrible, clear-eyed resolve, and I spoke the truth I had been avoiding, the truth I had been too afraid to voice. I can't do this anymore, Ben. He looked up, his eyes wide with a new kind of fear, a deeper terror than I'd ever seen in them before. This wasn't the fear of a memory, this was the fear of losing everything, right here, right now. I love you. The words were firm, undeniable. I love you more than I have ever loved anyone or anything in my entire life. But I am losing you. And worse, I am losing our daughter. I am losing myself. This darkness inside you, it's not just consuming you, Ben. It's consuming all of us. It's poisoning everything it touches. My voice trembled, but it didn't break. It was stronger than I had ever heard it. You are not the only one fighting a war in this house. My war is watching the man I love disappear a little more every day. My war is trying to explain to our little girl why her daddy is always angry or sad or just gone. My war is waking up every single morning and choosing to hope, choosing to love, even when every single sign, every single piece of evidence, points to despair. And I am tired, Ben. I am so tired. I have nothing left to give. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the air burning in my lungs. The man I married, the man who stood in a backyard surrounded by roses and promised to build a life with me, to cherish me, to be my partner, he would never, ever let this happen. He was a fighter. That is who you are, at your very core. It is the essence of you. So I need you to fight this. Not for me. Not even for Lily. But for yourself. Because you, Benjamin Evans, are worth fighting for. You are worth saving. But I can't fight it for you. I can't drag you out of the darkness. You have to want to walk out of it yourself. You have to choose to fight. I knelt down in front of him, so we were eye to eye, our knees almost touching on the carpet. So this is it, Ben. This is the line. The final line. You call the VA tomorrow. You get help. You talk to someone, you get into a program, you take the medication, you do whatever it takes to start coming back to us. To start coming back to yourself. Or Lily and I will have to leave. Because I will not let this darkness take her, too. I will not let it destroy her spirit, her light, her joy, the way it is destroying you. I love you too much to let that happen. There was a long, terrible, profound silence. The kind of silence that has weight and mass, that presses in on you from all sides. The only sound in the room was our ragged, uneven breathing. I had thrown down the ultimate ultimatum. I had threatened the very foundation of our family, the one thing I knew he still cared about, deep down beneath the layers of pain. I was terrified of what he would say. I was terrified he would call my bluff. I was terrified he wouldn't. He looked at me, and for the first time in over a year, I didn't see the ghost, or the soldier, or the angry stranger. I saw him. Ben. The man. The man who loved me. He saw the absolute, unwavering, ferocious resolve in my eyes. He saw that I was not making a threat in the heat of the moment, but stating a cold, hard, unchangeable fact. He saw the bottomless depth of my exhaustion, and the even greater, more powerful depth of my love for him and for our daughter. He saw that this was not an abandonment, but the last, desperate act of a love that refused to stand by and watch him die. Slowly, painfully, he nodded. A single, sharp, definitive nod. A decision. Then his face crumpled, and he began to cry in earnest, not the quiet tears of shame, but great, racking, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from a place so deep and wounded I could barely comprehend it. It was the sound of a dam breaking, of a fortress wall finally crumbling. He didn't reach for me, and I didn't reach for him. We just sat there on the floor, in the wreckage of our old life, in the painful, raw space between the before and the after, and let the grief, the fear, the regret, and the first, faint glimmer of hope, wash over us. It was the most painful, the most terrifying, and the most necessary conversation of our lives. The next morning, he made the call. The road back was not a straight line. It was a winding, painful, arduous, 2 steps forward 1 step back journey through the minefield of therapy, the trial and error of medication, and the awkward, raw honesty of a support group for veterans. There were setbacks. Bad days that felt like we'd been thrown back to the beginning. Days when the medication made him feel numb and disconnected, and he'd want to stop. There were nights he still woke up screaming, drenched in the cold sweat of a nightmare, and I would hold him until the tremors subsided. But the crucial difference was that he was fighting. He was truly, actively fighting. He was showing up. He learned to name his demons, to give voice to the unspeakable horrors that haunted him. The IED explosion that tore through his vehicle, killing 2 of his closest friends, men whose names he would whisper in the dark. The little girl on the roadside, the one he couldn't save, her face forever etched behind his eyes. The constant, grinding, soul-eating fear of not knowing who the enemy was, of trusting no one. He started to unpack the concept of moral injury, the deep, spiritual wound that comes from doing or witnessing things that violate your core moral beliefs. He was bringing the war home, not as a live grenade ready to detonate at any moment, but as a story, a terrible, painful story that needed to be told, a grief that needed to be witnessed, a pain that needed to be shared to be borne. And I learned to listen. Not as a historian looking for a linear, logical narrative, not as a teacher looking for the main points, but as a wife, a partner, a witness. I learned to sit with him in the pain without trying to immediately fix it, to just be present, to hold his hand while he trembled, to let the silence be okay. I learned that some wounds don't heal cleanly. They don't disappear. They scar over. And a scar is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of survival. It's a testament to the fact that you were wounded, deeply, but you lived. I stopped trying to fix him and started learning how to stand beside him in the mess, how to love the scarred man as fiercely as I had loved the unbroken one. My own legacy, I've come to understand, is not one of dramatic, public victory. There was no awards ceremony for me, no medal pinned to my chest, no grand, cinematic reconciliation on a public stage. My triumph was quiet, personal, and woven into the fabric of our daily life. It was the first time, months after my desperate ultimatum, that Ben was able to sit through Lily's entire Saturday morning soccer game without having a panic attack. He didn't cheer, he didn't shout encouragement from the sidelines. He just sat there in a fold-out chair, holding my hand, his knuckles white with the effort of staying present, but he stayed. He stayed for the whole hour. And when Lily, her face flushed with effort and joy, somehow managed to kick the ball into the goal, she looked over at us, a question in her eyes, and he gave her a small, tentative, but genuine thumbs up. The smile she gave him in return, a smile of pure, unadulterated joy and relief, was brighter than any medal, any parade, any headline could ever be. My legacy is the new, more complex, more beautiful rhythm we've painstakingly created in our home. It's a rhythm that acknowledges the bad days but makes sacred space for the good ones. It's the sound of Ben laughing, a real, deep, from-the-belly laugh, at something silly the cat did, a sound I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. It's watching him sit at the kitchen table, his brow furrowed in concentration, patiently helping Lily with her fractions homework, his voice calm and steady and present. It's the quiet, knowing look in his eyes when he sees that I'm the one who is tired, who is stretched thin, and he wordlessly gets up and brings me a cup of tea, exactly how I like it, without me having to ask. It's in the way he sometimes reaches for my hand in the middle of the night, not in terror, but just to make sure I'm still there. He is not the man he was before he left. That man, the one with the easy smile and the untroubled eyes, is gone, a casualty of the war as surely as if he'd fallen on the battlefield. I have mourned for that man. But a new man is here. A man who is stronger for having faced his demons and survived, more compassionate for having known profound suffering, more grateful for the small, quiet moments of peace. Our love is different, too. It's not the bright, untested, optimistic love of our youth. It's a love that has been through the fire. It's scarred, and tempered, and infinitely more durable. It's a love that has seen the worst and chosen to stay. I still teach history. But I no longer teach it as a series of neat, clean cause-and-effect events leading to an inevitable conclusion. I teach it as a messy, complicated, deeply human story of resilience. I teach about the wars, yes, but I also teach about the aftermath. I teach about the soldiers who came home, and the families who welcomed them, and the long, difficult, often silent work of building a peace within oneself. I tell my students that history isn't just about the big battles and the famous speeches. It's about the quiet struggles, the personal costs, the scars that are passed down through generations. I tell them that the most important battles are often the ones fought not on a field with armies, but in the silence of the human heart, the battles for hope, for healing, for love. The other day, I was cleaning out the hall closet, trying to make some order out of the chaos, and I found the velvet box tucked away on a high shelf. I took it down and opened it. The medals lay there, nestled in the plush interior. The bronze star, for valor. The purple heart, for the wounds he'd sustained. They were cold and heavy in my hand, the medals gleaming dully in the light from the hallway. They were beautiful, in their way. Symbols of incredible courage, of sacrifice, of a debt I can never fully comprehend. But they are not the story. Not our story. The real story is not in the hero's return, but in the long, hard, unglamorous road home that comes after the cheering stops. The real heroism is not in the single, medal-worthy act of bravery under fire, but in the daily, grinding, often invisible courage it takes to choose to live, to heal, to love, to get out of bed and face the day when you are haunted by ghosts. It's in the choice to make a phone call for help. It's in the strength to sit through a child's soccer game. It's in the vulnerability to let someone see your broken pieces. I closed the box and put it back on the shelf. I don't need a medal to tell me about sacrifice. I don't need a parade to understand courage. My proof is in the man who now, more often than not, sleeps peacefully through the night. My proof is in the laughter that once again echoes in the halls of our home, a sound more precious to me than any symphony. My proof is in the love that refused to be extinguished, that stood its ground in the face of the deepest darkness, a love that was brave enough to say, this far, and no further, and strong enough to help him find his way back. He is a hero, yes. The medals say so. But so am I. And so is every other wife, every husband, every parent, every child who stands beside a wounded warrior, who fights the secondary battle that begins when the fighting is done, the battle for the soul that comes home. We are the keepers of the flame. We are the witnesses to the pain. We are the patient gardeners in the scarred landscape of their hearts. We are the architects of the peace that follows the war. And our legacy is not written in history books or recorded in speeches. It is written in the quiet moments of reclamation, in the hard-won smiles, in the love that is brave enough to not just survive, but to rebuild, piece by painful piece, a life worth living.